In capital cities around the world, New Year's Eve celebrations were more muted than they would be normally. In London, official events were cancelled. So too in Berlin, where a New Year's Eve party at the Brandenburg Gate took place without a live audience, as a TV show only. Madrid was one of the few cities in Europe to celebrate New Year's Eve, but there the crowd was limited to less than half its usual size. Thailand welcomed the new year with a fireworks display in Bangkok under heavy COVID-19 restrictions.
Happy New Year!
It was one of the few places in the country to host end-of-the-year celebrations after other events were cancelled due to the spread of Omicron. In Hong Kong, fireworks lit up the Victoria Harbour waterfront, and a music concert by the city's Philharmonic Orchestra marked the beginning of 2022. In North Korea, there were also fireworks. Taiwan too, lighting up the night sky. Hours earlier, New Zealand had been one of the first to ring in the new year. Its neighbour Australia didn't hold back. Tens of thousands of people gathered around Sydney Harbour Bridge in a tribute also to the frontline workers in the fight against COVID-19. But elsewhere, there were bans on big gatherings. In China, where 2 years ago coronavirus first emerged, events were cancelled with the nation on high alert and the city of Xi'an under lockdown. Since the first reported case, more than 5.4 million people have died around the world. And with the Omicron variant taking hold, many governments have reimposed restrictions to try to ease the strain on overwhelmed hospitals.
People over age 50, like Rita, are becoming homeless in alarming numbers. They make up half of all unhoused people in California. Experts say the housing shortage and steeply rising rents are the main reasons for the surge in homeless elders. Older people on fixed incomes, like the federal old age pension program, are being pushed out of housing they rented for years. For others, a one-time medical crisis or a major expense can end up in homelessness.
After ramping up the possibility for weeks of a Russian invasion of Ukraine, the White House on Wednesday downgraded that threat from President Vladimir Putin, saying an invasion is no longer imminent. The United States maintains diplomacy is the best path to resolving security disagreements. Russia wants assurances NATO will halt expansion into former Soviet republics like Ukraine, but the West won't provide that guarantee. Instead, Biden's promised severe consequences if Putin invades.
Das ist bald endet.
Hauptsache, dass Leute müssen leben. Das ist Hauptsache. Ich weiß nicht, was es noch wird.
We've been seeing people coming in, families, mostly young women. The elderly, mostly opting to stay behind, and most of the people that have been coming in are young women. Now, the government here in Poland says an estimated 100,000 people by this morning have crossed over. Now, that's a jump of almost 70,000 to the total count since last night, which gives you a sense of how quickly things are changing on the ground inside Ukraine. That is a large number, and the government here is expecting more. Speaking to the people inside, one of the things our team found most interesting, perhaps disturbing, is many of the young women that are here with children, of course, to leave their partners, their husbands behind, who were going to be conscripted into the Ukrainian army to help to push back the Russian invasion, to help continue to fight off the Russian invasion.
Women's rights activists shed tears of joy. For years, they've been fighting for the right to legal abortion. Now Colombia's constitutional court has made it possible. 4 out of 5 judges voted in favor of extending abortion rights, despite opposition from the Catholic Church and pro-life activists who prayed in front of the court. In most countries, the time limit for having an abortion is far shorter. In the meantime, women activists say it's not enough to have their rights on paper. They say they'll keep fighting to make sure the law is implemented.
The wildfires are rapidly moving from one place to another and consuming almost everything in this area in the Argentine province of Corrientes. And Firefighters are also moving fast, trying to burn a control line that will slow down the advance of the flames. Over 800,000 hectares have already been destroyed, and with it, livestock, grains, and wildlife.
This is an area that generally sees abundant rainfall, but strong winds, lack of humidity, and drought are making it easy for fire like this one to spread all across the province. And an average of around 30,000 hectares of land are burning every day.
Also at risk are 12,000 hectares of marshlands in Iberá. The area is a natural reserve where caimans, amphibians, and other 300 species of birds are being affected.
The Russian invasion was launched with terrifying speed and against a wide range of targets right across the country. The long military build-up around Ukraine's borders finally unleashed by order of the Kremlin. Helicopter gunships, fighter jets, missiles, tanks, convoys of armored vehicles are all involved in what Russia calls a military operation. For the moment, the targets appear to be specific and strategic. They include Ukraine's airfields and military bases. This video from Melitopol in southern Ukraine appears to show the destruction of the city's airfield. But shrapnel and shells are also reported to have landed in civilian areas, including the capital, Kiev. The Russian military offensive follows a carefully choreographed strategy of Russia's President Vladimir Putin. He unilaterally recognized two separatist regions in eastern Ukraine as independent of Kiev, and then sent Russian soldiers in under the pretext of being peacekeepers.
Chinese authorities are racing to contain a fast-spreading Omicron outbreak, but they're struggling to move fast enough. This week, millions of residents living in the cities of Tangshan and Shenyang in the north were put under varying levels of lockdown. Nationwide, thousands of new infections continue to be reported daily, and officials are still responding with rigid mass testing, contact tracing, and quarantine, an approach they call Dynamic Zero COVID. In the southern city of Shenzhen, videos of rare protests against extended lockdowns are posted on social media. Most of those living in the tech hub resumed normal life on Monday, but some neighborhoods remain closed off. While frustrated voices may not be enough to change the government's approach to the pandemic, the health of the economy is proving more of a concern. Shanghai, the country's main financial hub, has avoided mass lockdown despite rising infections, though Disneyland and other entertainment venues have been closed until further notice. Doctors in the northeastern province of Jilin have begun treating COVID patients with Pfizer drug Paxlovid, though foreign-made vaccines are still banned.
Smoke rises over the Jeddah skyline, the apparent target, the massive oil complex on the outskirts of the city. Saudi authorities confirmed what they called a hostile operation. Over a period of several hours, there were also reported strikes in a number of other Saudi cities, the Houthi rebels based in Yemen claiming responsibility. The US sent what it said was a significant number of Patriot missile interceptors to Saudi Arabia earlier this month, nearly a year after an urgent request from the kingdom which said its supply was running dangerously low. The Biden administration denied holding up the delivery amidst sharp tension in the relationship between the two countries. The Saudis are particularly angered by the administration's decision to remove Houthi rebels from its list of designated terror groups.
Food and fuel have been especially hard hit. Pandemic-related kinks in the global supply chain and an energy shortage partly due to the war in Ukraine have driven up prices on a broad range of goods. With the U.S. government hoping to lower gas prices by releasing oil from the nation's strategic petroleum reserve and the Federal Reserve raising interest rates to discourage borrowing, President Biden says his administration is working on it.
Millions of families across the Horn of Africa are hungry and desperate. They're facing the worst drought the region has seen in 40 years. In Kenya, more than 3.5 million people need immediate help. Aid agencies say nearly 800,000 of them are children. The animals too are dying as it gets hotter and drier. Cases of malnutrition are rising. At this local health center, health workers are struggling to cope. They say when some of the children get here, they are severely malnourished. Grace Gibe says many children are going to school hungry. She says this drought is the worst she has ever seen. What little water is left in streams and rivers may soon run out. Desperate families stress the little that's left and can only hope the rains soon fall again.
The United Nations has sounded the alarm bell on the issue of world refugees. It says the number has exceeded 100 million for the first time on record. In the words of the UNHCR Commissioner Filippo Grandi, the figure is sobering and alarming in equal measure. Since the war broke out in February, the rate of refugees and displaced people has been accelerated. As early as March, 2.5 million Ukrainians left their country. The UN is expecting the figure to exceed 8 million by the end of this year. By the end of last June, the number of forcibly displaced people worldwide rose toward 90 million. It's the result of violence in Ethiopia, Burkina Faso, Myanmar, Nigeria, Afghanistan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and other countries. As the number of refugees across the world increases, relief agencies become less capable of handling the situation. The UN Humanitarian Office, OCHA, warns nearly 18 million people are going to face severe food shortages in the next 3 months across the African Sahel region.
Tens of thousands of people in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo have fled their homes in fear of their lives. The M23 rebel group has taken several small towns. Some of the residents have fled to neighbouring Uganda, others towards the regional capital, Goma. Churches and schools like this one are overrun with people seeking shelter. The Congolese army has launched a counter-offensive and retaken some of the territory. Congo's government says neighbouring Rwanda is behind M23, supporting it with weapons and soldiers.
Long lines of people waiting for a COVID test in Buenos Aires. They have been waiting for hours as authorities struggle to cope with a rise in COVID-19 infections. The government has confirmed the Omicron variant is responsible for the rise in infections. Omicron still poses a serious threat to the health system, and that's why leaders in the region are pushing for more booster shots and preparing for some difficult days ahead as the Omicron variant continues to spread.
Tonight, weather extremes as destructive as they are contradictory. In the West, fires, historic flooding, and extreme drought all at the same time. The latest epicenter for devastation, Yellowstone National Park, an icon of Mother Nature, parts now underwater with unprecedented flash flooding just as the busy summer tourist season begins. Onlookers watching helplessly as this two-story home was swallowed by the Yellowstone River. The level so high and the current so strong. Holy! This bridge was also swept away by raging waters. The floods stemming from a 1,000-mile-long atmospheric river pounded Washington, Montana, and Wyoming, dumping massive amounts of rain. That, along with rapidly melting snowpack, making roads completely impassable. But the rain did little for fires threatening communities in California, a situation made even more dangerous by the mega drought stretching across the West. This as record-breaking temperatures span much of the country. More than 100 million are under heat alerts. In several cities, the heat index will top more than 100 degrees today. Meanwhile, other parts of the country are bracing for severe storms that yesterday tore through the Midwest.
The whole roof fell down.
At Chicago's O'Hare, travelers were told to seek shelter as near hurricane-force winds toppled trees and ripped apart homes.
In southern China, entire villages have disappeared underwater. Record rainfall in recent weeks has caused several major rivers and tributaries to burst their banks in the provinces of Guangdong, Guangxi, Fujian, and Jiangxi. Flood alerts have been raised to the highest levels. Rescue teams are working around the clock to move hundreds of thousands of people to higher ground and clear landslides triggered in mountainous areas. More than 1,000 homes and farms have been destroyed, with the losses estimated at more than $250 million. In urban areas, roads have become rivers. Businesses and schools have closed, and public transport has been suspended. Heavy downpours are common along the Pearl River Delta at this time of year, But experts say climate change is causing more extreme and erratic weather patterns. As the rain moves northwards, some counties have begun cleaning up. Emergency teams are moving debris and clearing blocked roads, but many areas are still without electricity. Last year, almost 400 people were killed in floods in central Henan province. The government was accused of being slow to respond to the so-called once-in-a-thousand-years downpour.
Questa crisi noi non la vedevamo da 70 anni, da quando cioè conosciamo le statistiche un livello così basso del fiume non l'abbiamo da 70 anni. Teniamo conto che facciamo il 55% del debito nazionale come PIL nel bacino del Po. Oggi siamo già a meno 50% di quella produzione.
Outside the federal courthouse in Los Angeles, hundreds of angry demonstrators gathered to denounce the Supreme Court's abortion ruling. Across the country, anti-abortion forces cheered and Republican politicians crowed. Several states made most abortions illegal within hours of the ruling. Legal abortion supporters and politicians were distraught. California has some of the country's strongest laws protecting a woman's right to terminate her pregnancy. Private insurance plans and the state government healthcare system pay for abortions. Those laws, like others in mostly Democratic-leaning states, will not be affected. States, including California, will help women travel from states where the procedure is banned, says Governor Gavin Newsom.